Welcome back to Queens of the Damned. We're missing Miranda this week, but Nikki and I will be doing our best to make up for her absence. We went to see Ari Aster's new movie Midsommer, and spoiler alert, we loved it, and can't wait to talk about it. Obviously, we discussed the entire movie, including the ending, so if you haven't seen it, unplug your headphones and run, don't walk, to your nearest theater. We will be waiting for you when you get back. We hope everybody else enjoys the episode. Ari Aster has described this as more of a breakup movie than a horror movie. Do you agree or disagree?
I guess I would agree. I mean, for me, it wasn't
Me too.
really... Yeah, it wasn't really... It is a horror movie. I mean, I guess let's get that straight, but for me, it was more of a drama that was highly symbolic. So.
Yes, I agree. And I read an interview with him where he said that, for the other people visiting this community in the movie, so for her boyfriend and his friends and the two people from London, it was a horror movie. But for Danny, it was a fairy tale.
I read that same interview.
Yes.
Just about 15 minutes ago.
Yep. I've got it pulled up on my computer right now because I had read it a couple days ago. But yeah, I like that, he says that she liberates herself from this dead weight, literally, of this relationship. And yeah. I definitely agree that I could see it as a breakup movie.
I don't know if breakup movie encompasses it. I'm kind of thinking of, it's more of an exorcism movie, in a way.
Yes.
Like, that's not what I literally mean, but it's about overcoming or dealing with.
Yes, I agree. And I think that, it definitely exorcises her of all those demons, one of which is her loser boyfriend. Yep.
And what a negligible demon he turns out to be.
What a fucking dud. Oh my god. Yep. So for example, here's an example of something that I just, knew in the beginning, or that I have been thinking about for the last few days. So, in the beginning of the movie, when, her family has died, and he's going up to the house, he stands outside and he pauses, right? Which is very natural. I don't fault him for that. No. Because I think he can hear her wailing from the street. So I feel like most people would be, not sure what to do when confronted with that, level of raw grief. But if you notice that difference between him and then later in the movie, when she has her other wailing grief scene after she sees him having sex, and the women rush to her immediately without even thinking about it.
Yep.
And then not only do they comfort her, but they feel the grief with her.
Yes.
Oh, I just loved it. And I really think that goes back to, exorcising the demon of that shitty boyfriend and this fairy tale for her of finding this community that supports her and loves her and, feels everything with her.
Yeah. There was something I was going to say, but obviously it wasn't important. I was just kind of going along the ride of what you were saying, and I think this movie was so image heavy. I just keep seeing parts of it in my mind, and as we're talking about it, I keep just bringing it up,
replaying
it.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree, and I definitely think that it's also liberating for her because she spends the whole movie, telling her boyfriend oh no, it's fine, I'm fine. Yes, I'll do the shrooms, even though she's not ready. And, she tells the hot Swedish guy, whose name I can't remember, Pelle?
It was either Pelle or Pella.
Okay, we'll say Pelle. That, when he's oh, Christian forgot your birthday. And she's yeah, but it's fine. I should have reminded him. No, you shouldn't. Oh, shit. so angry about that. I just pulled my headphones out. Like, no, you shouldn't have to remind your boyfriend of your birthday when you literally said the day before, it's my birthday tomorrow.
Oh, and then he made up some BS excuse about, like, oh, I thought it was yesterday still.
Right. Because of the midnight sun.
Yeah, but I don't know. It definitely brought up memories for me of being in that kind of relationship where you become the crazy one.
Me too.
You know?
Me too. And you don't even necessarily realize you're doing it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You know, it kind of reminded me of, though so many things remind me of this, but of the cool girl concept where everything's fine, everything's chill, don't worry about it. Like, I'm not this crazy harpy, I'm cool, I'm chill, I'm not gonna nag you, you know?
Yeah, absolutely.
And I loved that she was able to completely liberate herself from that. Yeah.
Do you think the humor in this movie took away from the horror or enhanced it? And do you think all the moments when people laughed, especially the sex scene between Christian and Maya, were meant to be funny?
So, yes, I do think that they were meant to be funny.
Yeah, me too.
And I think that it enhanced the horror. I think that the humor added to it because it just... I don't know how to describe it. It made you feel like you were this outsider looking in on this different culture with these, to us, very strange rituals. So I don't think I don't know if I would say it added to it, I guess, but it definitely didn't take away from it for me. I liked the humor.
Same, and I think it was meant to be funny for sure. I mean, it depends on which moment you're talking about. The sex scene was at the same time both meant to be funny and I think also just extremely uncomfortable for us.
Yes.
And I think that was the director reaching out to the audience and pulling them into the experience of, like,
I agree.
I'm going to confront you with this situation where it's like, just what would you do if you saw that? Or if you were in that room. Yeah.
I agree. And that's another thing where, Maya is feeling, she's in pain at first, right? Because it hurts the first time you have sex for most people. And, but the women around her are also feeling the pain with her, and Christian doesn't know what to do with that, which, again, you can't 100% fault him because, like, would any of us really know what to do? If you were having sex with someone and they were moaning and everyone around you was also moaning,
that would just be, I mean, how would you even know how to react to that? You would just laugh, right?
Right.
Because what else do you do?
Right. And I mean, especially when the woman goes up and, like, pushes on his butt.
That was,
and, like, forces him to keep
gag.
going to climax. That was definitely supposed to be funny. I mean, come on.
Yeah.
Come on. That was definitely supposed to be funny.
There's no way it wasn't supposed to be funny.
Right. And, I think some of it was uncomfortable humor, but there was definitely a lot of funny parts in it, and I think they were all meant to be funny, which I liked. I liked that it wasn't, like, completely, serious the whole time.
Mm-hmm.
So the next question is, we've heard several people say that this is not a horror film. Following Hereditary, that's a sort of logical statement. For you, where does the horror lie in this story?
So for me, I don't know that there is a lot of horror in this story for me. I mean, I would say if you were interpreting it, which this is one of those films you're supposed to be heavily interpreting the events as to what the director's trying to say to you. I think the most disturbing thing was supposed to be the way... I think the most horrified moment I had was when he was urinating on the tree.
My god, that was such a fucking dude.
That was the most horrifying moment for me, and the worst moments for me were just these people, these Americans, of course, because it's, it's always Americans, right? just infiltrating this culture and making the sacred profane, kind of. That is what really got me. It wasn't the death stuff. It wasn't the sex stuff. It wasn't any of that. In fact, most of the movie, I was soothed. Like,
I was too.
I felt like I was
so calm.
A weirdly familiar place, and a lot of the rituals, and I'm not talking about the extreme ones, like the ritual suicides and all that stuff, but a lot of the smaller rituals, like the picking the flowers backwards, and I'm trying to think of what else. Oh, the maypole.
Pube in the pie.
No, not that one. The maypole, though, like, they're very familiar neo-pagan rituals,
right?
And they're not anything weird to me, right? I've done the maypole thing, and you know, I'm very familiar with, like, the Eve of St. Agnes, where you're supposed to dream of your husband if you put the whatever under your pillow, or you fast, or what.
Right.
Like, there's different ones, but it's, for me, I was just like, oh, a world that I'm, like, familiar with that's being brought to life in a non-condescending way. I felt so at home with that.
Yeah. Yeah, and I agree. I mean, I don't know if I don't know. I guess it just depends on your perspective of, and I think we get into this in a later question, but if you think that they deserved what they got or not. I think if you don't think they deserved what they got, then yes, it's a horror movie. If you do think it, which I do, spoiler for a future question, then it's not a horror movie. I mean, like you, I felt very calm throughout. I would absolutely join that cult. Sign me up. Yeah, it didn't bother me. And it wasn't even so much the familiarity of some of the symbols. It was just something about the atmosphere was so calming, and even the ritual suicides didn't really bother me because of the way that she explained it with, this is the end of their life cycle. They are happy to do this.
Yes.
So even that, once they explained it, did not bother me at all.
Yeah. I'm trying to refrain from further talking about that because I think there's some stuff later.
Yeah.
But yeah absolutely. Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, didn't really bother me.
Okay, so yeah, no, I didn't lose a wink of sleep over this. In fact, I think I slept better.
Yep. I was totally calm when I got home.
It was really interesting because Paul's friend just said, I just got the image that, like, this movie wants to say that women want to kill men, and I'm like, that's not it. And I was like, we only want to put you in a bear suit and set you on fire when you act like that.
Exactly.
But
exactly.
Yeah, it's really fun.
Yeah.
And he's like, oh yeah, that's fair enough.
Right, sure. That's funny.
But that conversation, I had a really good conversation with him about that, ties into a question that came up that's coming up later, too, so I don't want to...
Okay, of course.
I'm having, like, this flashback to when we discussed Hereditary, and, like, everything tied into everything, so we ended up not being able to refrain from talking about stuff. Okay. Aster said he shot this practically back-to-back with Hereditary. So do you think that they share any themes? And if so, do you think making them so close together influenced that?
I mean, they share the big theme of grief and how you deal with grief. And, I think that there's obviously a big difference in how the journeys ended. I mean, in Hereditary, Toni Collette never really deals with her grief. And then she gets taken over by a demon and cuts her own head off. Whereas in this movie, Dani learns to overcome her grief. And I think Dani accepts, as do I, in the end, that she was meant to be there. Mm-hmm. And her family was meant to die so that she could be there and she could find her new family. And so I liked the, the different perspectives of grief. You know, one person who never gets over it, and it does them in because it, you know, it blinds her for a long time to what's really going on. And then the other person who begins to sort of come out of her shell and get over things as she, you know, finds this new family that's really embracing her, and then in the end, obviously, is freed and reborn.
Yeah. Yeah, I would agree with that.
Yeah.
For me, the obvious... Okay, this is going to sound really obvious at first, but just hang in with me here. The big unifying theme is cults, right? So I always think of Joe Hill. I just finished Horns, like a few weeks ago, and his afterword to that I will never forget. He's like, he's saying that a writer has a lunchbox on several topics, and they take out the objects that are in the lunchbox and they examine them and they rearrange them, and often they don't come up with an opinion on the specific subject. For instance, Horns was an exercise in what if sin can lead you to salvation. But then he writes a totally different story, which he ends Horns with, or like after Horns, that says the opposite thing, you know, like it's just evil or whatever. So I kind of think Hereditary and Midsommer were an exercise in how can cults be used in horror. In one way, they can be kind of the downfall of an entire family. You can be puppeteered by this group of people, and it can be while not traditional horror movie, but it can still be a source of great horror. On the other hand, it could be a very empowering and enlightening experience. And so here's the two sides of that coin, kind of. But they both, while they're both sides of a coin, they're not exactly opposites of each other. They have extremely unifying themes, and they cross over. So for me, that's what it was.
I definitely agree with that. Yeah. And I did read something, like, back before this movie even came out, that the original idea for Midsommer kind of came from, like, a studio, and he was hired to basically write it. And the original idea was, like, a traditional slasher movie that takes place in a Swedish cult during Midsommer, right? And then he ended up evolving it, obviously, into something that was way better than that sounds like. Yes. But I do think that working on Hereditary, and then, I mean, he, you know, I read in an interview where he said that, like, when Hereditary was coming out and, like, getting all of this acclaim, he didn't even get to enjoy it because he was so busy editing Midsommer.
Oh, really?
Because they had filmed Hereditary, and then they had to film Midsommer because they had to film in the summer, and that's when Florence Pugh, the lead actress, was available, and obviously it has to be filmed in the summer because it's a summer movie, and, you know, so, but I do think that, you know, working on them kind of at the same time helped evolve those ideas into one kind of continuous thread.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
He did say that since they were made back to back, he said in one interview, I don't know if it was the same one you were talking about earlier, Rachel, but that he was working through something while he was making I believe films. I believe he was dumped. Oh, really? Okay.
Yes, because that's kind of where the thing with the breakup movie came from. I think he said, like, he was dumped, or maybe he wasn't dumped, but anyway, he went through a bad breakup. Right. And so with Danny, he was able to help, like, work through his own issues into, like, a sense of catharsis.
That's wonderful.
It really is.
It is.
It really is.
I know he said it was selfish, but I mean, where else does it come from? It doesn't come out of the ether, right?
Well, and I feel like all filmmakers and screenwriters are selfish, right?
Yeah,
they're writing and making things that they want to see. Yeah, and that they think are interesting, and that's what he thought was interesting at the time. So, yeah, no, I don't think there's anything wrong with that. Okay, so what do you think the significance of the number 9 was in the movie?
Okay, so I didn't look this up or anything.
Okay.
But I know that 9 is a magical number. A 3 is a magical number, and 3 times is especially powerful. That's all I know. Did you find anything else out about it?
Nope. But but that's why I wanted to talk about it. That's why I wanted to talk about it. So, for people who didn't catch on to the number 9, this is a 9-day festival that takes place over 90 years, right? And each of the life seasons in Holga? Is that how you pronounce it?
I can't remember.
Holga? I can't remember. I think it's something like Holga. Anyway, in the commune, each of the 4 life seasons is 18 years, which is 9 times 2. And I kind of assumed, via context clues, that Danny's birthday, right, she's turning 27, which would be halfway through the summer season. And 9 years through her summer season, literally her midsummer, as she is arriving for this festival. I don't know what the number 9 meant. I Googled it. I saw a lot of articles where people were kind of like stumped, but I never found anything that I thought was a really good explanation.
Did you just search a numerology significance of the number 9 or occult?
No, I was like looking up like Midsommer number 9.
Oh no, the only way you're gonna find actually good information on that is not tied to the because the way he came up with that was probably doing research just like we did. So
right.
I mean, wherever he got his source.
Let's go to numerology.com and see what they say. So it says, when you multiply any number by 9, then add the resulting digits and reduce them to a single digit, it always becomes a 9. For example, 6 times 9 equals 54. Reduce 54 to a single digit by adding them together. 5 plus 4 equals 9.
Okay, but what does that mean?
There is nothing coincidental about this peculiarity. Sorry. Try it. Any number, no matter how large, multiplied by 9 reduces to 9. From a numerological perspective, the 9 simply takes over, like the infamous body snatchers. Any number that was initially increased by a factor of 9 loses its own identity and instead takes on the characteristics of the 9. No other number has that quality.
Okay.
So I think that fits.
That does fit.
That fits.
I found another, more simple one, though.
Mm-hmm.
It's just that in its natural aspect, number 9 symbolizes the physical plane of existence, in which the law is manifested trinity. In its human aspect, 9 represents the idea of spiritual power, which is expressed in the possession of the 3 worlds. That is the idea of initiation.
Okay.
So that's probably what it is. Specifically initiation, spiritual power.
Mm-hmm. And the idea that in the commune, they are a whole, right?
Yes.
Like each person almost loses their own identity to become part of the group consciousness.
Oh, and then that would be the part that you looked up, which is the Right, the math. And it says the 9 lives in the world and understands the connections between all of mankind. It is a humanitarian and sees no real difference between its neighbor next door and the person living in a very different culture and environment on the other side of the world. The 9 is the least judgmental of all numbers, the most tolerant, and the most conscious. That definitely fits, too.
It does. Neat.
Oh, I'm sure you could dive into that for hours.
I'm sure you really could. Anyway, yes, that's very cool. So, yeah, that was something that I noticed. I noticed the 9-day festival and, every 90 years. And then I started to think about, the life cycles. And then, when you, like I said, you use the context clues. I mean, if her boyfriend's getting his PhD, 27 would be about the right age. And it just lines up so perfectly. Otherwise, why else have it be her birthday? Right?
Yeah.
because it's not like that adds that big of a plot point, except another example of how much her boyfriend's a douchebag. And how there's, like, this hot Swedish guy that's, like, sketching her, and she's still trying to stay with the boyfriend. And I'm like, girl, he's drawing pictures of you.
Yeah, but she's so far gone in her head.
I know. She feels so much loyalty to him.
We should probably talk about the runes next. I think that would be a good segue.
I think so too. What did you find out about the runes?
So, I can't give you a visual depiction of it because it won't matter at all to people who are listening. But the one that looks like an R is Raido. It is journeys, explorations, self improvement, stuff like that. And there's a debate about whether inverted. Some people don't read them inverted. Some people do, or reverse. I think they call it reverse. Inverted would be tarot. I'm not sure. Like, you can tell how much of an expert I am on this right now.
Right.
But backwards, it would be like getting lost and finding obstacles. So it's interesting because for some of the characters in Midsommer, they are going on a journey through that exploration of specifically the self. And for some of them, they're going to encounter incredible hardship. So, and also I think that goes for even Danny. Both for
sure.
The two X's right on top of each other, that one's called Ingwaz, and it is fertility. Surprise, surprise.
What a shock. Okay.
Yes. Were there any others that you saw? I can't remember.
Well, there was the one that, like, the table was in the shape of. It was, like, the X that was connected at the top.
Oh, connected at the top. Yeah, I have that one, too.
Yeah, because that was the one that you saw over and over and over and over.
Oh,
and
okay,
then, like I said,
That's weird.
Even the tables were set like that in the,
Okay, so was it connected at the top with the straight line across, or was it like a peak, like a triangle?
No, it was a straight line.
Okay, I do not know. There's one that is an X with a peak on top. That means retreat. And there's one that looks like an hourglass if you turn it sideways. It's got a straight line across on the top and on the bottom. And that's breakthrough.
No, hang on. Let me find it. So they did the Elder Futhark, right? Isn't that what he says?
I believe so.
Okay, so let me find it.
But there are also ways you can connect runes. So if it goes beyond, like, the rune by itself, I am not a person to ask.
Right. No, same here. Okay, I guess it did have a peak at the top.
Yeah, because that's the one that I'm finding. And that's retreat. I can find...
Interesting.
That one I obviously didn't spend any time thinking about because I didn't remember that one. I only remembered fertility.
Okay, so here's the one so this one says that in Elder Futhark, that's called Othala, which can mean home or inheritance.
Okay, here we go. Real property is associated with this rune. It is the rune of acquisition and benefits.
Okay, so inheritance.
Yes. Yeah. And he uses the word inheritance. Interesting. It seems strange to say, but the benefits you receive, the inheritance, may be derived from something you must give up.
How interesting. And how interesting. So not only for Danny, because obviously, and one thing that I noticed is that rune was painted above her bed. Right?
Oh, so like, yeah. Oh, interesting.
So,
this can be particularly difficult when that which you are called upon to give up or abandon is part of your background, your cultural inheritance.
Okay.
That's so
she's like literally having to give up her entire life.
Yeah, old skins must be shed, outmoded relationships discarded.
Oh, yeah, there it is.
Yep.
Well, and I find it interesting that, it's about giving something up, right, in order to almost like reach another level, right?
Yeah.
And they have the table set that way for when the two elders are eating their final meal before committing suicide.
Yes.
So in order to reach the higher plane and then be reborn, as they believe, they have to obviously give up their lives. Yeah, I love it. I love it.
I also think, of course, the fertility symbol is not just fertility as you would think of it. Of crops and livestock and people. It's more of a like regeneration or like growth kind of thing. So while that was engaged a lot in the movie, the material aspects of that fertility, there's also the symbolic personal growth.
Okay.
Yeah. I love the thought that went into that.
I love that. Yeah, I really love that. So I'm reading this article that someone did where they talked to someone who's an expert in runes who saw the movie.
Oh, that's interesting.
And he said that the R is Radho? Radho?
It's pronounced Rydho, at least.
Rydho.
The one website I consulted said.
Okay.
Rydho.
Normally means growth or evolution, but reversed, it means discord, delusion, or death. That makes sense since they're recreating the demon, causing all the young women to dance themselves to death. Interesting.
Oh, in that specific scene? Is that what he...
Right, because it's backwards on Danny's dress when they're dancing around the maypole. Mm-hmm.
But yeah, so I'm sure we missed about 75 to 85% of the stuff that was in there.
Probably.
But those are just a few.
Oh, okay. Here's something. Okay. Something JS noted is the way that Midsommer hides various darkly funny puns in those same runes. After Josh disappears, aka killed, after asking too many questions about the runes and the Harga, that's what it is, Harga religion, Danny's boyfriend Christian sees his legs sticking out of the ground with the rune Anzuz carved into it. Recall that Anzuz means knowledge or insight. But in this context, with Josh having been killed for his desire for more knowledge, this is a kind of fucked up joke and insult.
That's...
Oh, that's funny. Oh, and I guess I forgot something about the number 9, but they sacrificed 9 people.
Oh, yes, they did.
Had to be burned to death at the end. But anyway, yes, I loved it. I loved the runes. I thought that was really smart. I thought that was, like you said, a lot of research went into this.
I love stuff like that. I don't like it, however, when people look for it in movies where it's not meant to be. Kind of like that documentary on The Shining where they're looking at the cans of baking soda or baking powder or whatever, thinking that
and
it's
the
like...
carpet. What does the carpet pattern mean?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I feel like that wasn't intentional if it was there. So.
Yeah.
How did you feel about the ending? Did you feel like the Americans got what they deserved? And do you think Danny made the right choice?
Yes and yes. I absolutely do. I think that they were so disrespectful. And I guess I'm including, so the two friends, Mark and Josh, I would say they were so disrespectful that yes, they did get what they deserved in the end, you know? And as far as Christian goes, I mean, yeah, he was a dick. Did he deserve to be burned alive? I mean, maybe that's a little extreme, but, yes. You know, but I do think she made the right choice, because had she chosen the villager instead of Christian, she never would have separated herself and been able to actually become who she was meant to be and be where she was meant to be forever. Right. She would have left with him.
Right.
So yes, I think that she made the right decision.
For me, the two people I struggle with are the Londoners.
Yes. And that's why I said just Americans in that.
Oh, you
because I wasn't counting.
Okay.
Yeah, I wasn't counting Connie and whatever her fiance's name was.
But it's still interesting that they wound up, in fact, to be the first people killed. Now,
I think so.
I understand the logistics of that. They're going to have this extreme reaction and go tell people, right? Obviously,
yeah, I believe that's why they killed them.
They're thinking, and metaphorically, they don't get to survive in this culture because they haven't accepted a way different than their own, which I understand. But literally, I don't think they deserved that. It was kind of weird. I guess when they started killing the others, I understood why. But the first one, as soon as they were like, he took the bus into town, I was like, wow, they jumped the gun on that one. Like, they killed him really quick. I don't know.
Right. I thought that the reason that Ingmar, that was Pele's brother's name, right? Mm-hmm. Ingmar. I think the reason he brought them was that Connie was supposed to kind of be the other outsider who was going to join the cult.
Oh, okay.
Right? Because he even mentions, Connie and I were dating when she met Simon. That's the fiance, Simon. And she says, well, we went on a date that I didn't even know was a date. So clearly he kind of had a thing for her and brought her the way that Pele brought Danny, right?
Okay.
But then when Simon disappeared, or when they had such a, or I guess when they had such a fucked up reaction, because again, I mean, we discussed this after we saw the movie, they were freaking out, screaming, trying to stop the man from even jumping, right? Screaming in people's faces, whereas Danny watched the whole time. And yes, she did get upset afterwards,
Of course.
But she stood there the whole time and stood there and listened to the woman's explanation without freaking out and screaming and crying.
Yeah.
And so I think that's what did them in. I think if they had been calm and not been like, you're so fucked up, we're leaving, this is disgusting.
Yeah, I don't even think calmness was what was called for in that situation. I think, well, because the cult members were all, I don't know if I like the word cult there. I don't know. Anyway,
I know.
The members of this community were also very upset when the people jumped, especially when his life didn't end right away. They were feeling his pain.
Right.
They were mimicking, not really mimicking,
right.
but actually, I think, feeling what he was feeling and what she was feeling. No, she didn't feel anything.
Yes.
She was dead. But but anyway, you know what I'm saying is that they're not asking you not to be emotionally upset,
right?
But they are asking you to be respectful of their tradition,
right? Exactly. Be upset for the because like Josh and Christian. I mean, they were upset. I mean, I think Christian pukes, but they're not screaming in the faces of the villagers, right? They are upset, but keeping it to themselves almost, keeping it quiet. Whereas, like I said, I mean, Connie and Simon, are screaming at the man, don't jump, don't do it, and so I think that's what did them in. And
like I said earlier, probably this, in a sense, became more disturbing than the actual suicides that were taking place.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh, I just love this movie so much.
I do too. Oh, the second part of that question, do you think Danny made the right choice? This is an interesting question to me, because the one thing that kind of bothered me throughout this was the sense that, in a way, she didn't really have a choice. It was kind of a paradox where she gets out of this situation where she doesn't have a choice by being forced into doing, things she would never normally do. And that made me a bit uncomfortable, but until the end where you realize, like, her inner world is different than her outer world, like her outer reaction.
Exactly. And I felt the same way, except I took it more as, like I said before, not so much as she was being forced into doing these things, but it was almost her destiny to be there and doing these things. You know? Mm-hmm. Because even in the scene where they're, you know, baking the pies, I mean, she's fitting right in, and she's actually smiling and having a good time. And that's really the first time that we've seen her really smile throughout the movie. Yeah. Right? And even the initial trip, like when they initially take the mushrooms and Pele is talking about, you know, can't you feel the earth breathing? Can't you feel, you know, the life coming up from the ground? And she looks down, and she is the only one, I assume, who sees, like, the earth coming up through her hand. Mm-hmm. Right?
Doesn't that eventually upset her, though?
I mean, I think she's kind of freaked out by it, but
right.
I don't think that's the thing that upsets her. I think what upsets her is she hears, I don't know, like, she hears that group singing, and I assume it's a song that maybe was something to do with her family, like she knew the song. Because that's when she starts saying, you know, no, 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 no. Oh, and walking towards them. Yeah, and then she thinks they laugh at her, and that's what really upsets her. And then she goes in the outhouse and sees her dead sister behind her in the mirror, and then she's just done for.
Yeah.
Yeah. But again, that happens when they're about to do the May Queen dance. She looks down and she sees the grass growing over her feet. Mm-hmm. Because she's meant to be there.
Or so, because she's high.
Well, that too. But I took it more as, like, she's, you know, it's not so much as her being forced to do these things. It's just, like, the will of the universe that she's there. And she's there at the right time, and it's where she needs to be. And the universe brought her there.
That reminds me, that moment where they say, when can we sit down? And they say, we sit when it is right to sit. That was just like...
Yes. Yes.
It was, to me, I was like, yeah, for some reason I had such a strong positive reaction to that. Yes.
Yes, I did too.
We sit when it's right to sit. And
I did too. Ugh. This movie's so good.
Yeah, I think it's one of the examples of a group, like a hive mind.
Yes.
One of the very few examples of a positive hive mind, a more positive hive mind. Because lately we've seen so many, just so many people who can do so much harm with their collective beliefs.
Yes, I agree. But yes, this was like a positive hive mind. It was an emotionally uplifting hive mind. Yes, it was. How did you feel about the way some very intense life experiences, such as sex and death, were portrayed in this film? Do you think it's Aster's way of poking fun at our cultural attitude towards these subjects, or is he meaning to present both sides of an argument?
Okay, I have to say here I cheated because I read an interview where he said you can look at it two ways. You can look at it two ways. Just for an example, the suicides. You can look at it as this horrific thing, or you can look at it as, a kind of revolutionary way to deal with death and to face death head on. And that brings up all those arguments about end-of-life care and stuff like that. And assisted suicide, which I believe is still legal in Oregon. But
I think so,
is an extremely contentious subject. I don't know if that was the word that I meant to use, but we'll roll with it. So for me, I think this was it was such a death positive film, and it was such a breath of fresh air for me to see it. And I was praying the whole time that it wouldn't turn out to be a horrific thing. You know, I was really rooting for this culture. I mean, not that it's what I would do or anything. It's just that, here's a fresh perspective, and we need those. So, and, you know, I think we already talked about the sex. It's just very, like, you know how sex scenes in movies are? They're just, like, not realistic
They,
at
like,
all.
already make you feel really awkward.
Yeah, well, this was, like, extremely realistic, but in the same way, extremely just weird and uncomfortable. I don't know. And I also like the way that was portrayed too. It wasn't like this big romantic thing, you know, where you have, right, because you have this set, it's beautiful, and you got all these flowers, and there's the young red-headed woman, and, you know, all that stuff. But
Virgin,
it just turns into this, like, absurd, farcical sort of thing.
Right, exactly. Yeah, no, I definitely agree with you. I think that, you know, especially in the sex scene, I mean, you have, like you said, this beautiful red-headed woman, but not just that, this beautiful young I don't know how old she was supposed to be, but she looked like 16.
Very young, yes.
But this beautiful young red-headed virgin literally laying on a bed of flowers. And when he walks up to her, she literally opens her legs for him, just like slowly opens her legs. And then, like you said, I mean, it turns, I think for him, you know, it starts out as kind of this, like, okay. But then when the other women start getting involved, you can see, I mean, he's just looking around like, what the hell is going on, right? And so, yeah, I definitely think that that's kind of a send-up of the way that we treat, you know, sex as this kind of, especially the first time you have sex, as this, like, holy thing, you know? The first time, your first time should be special, and, you know, that it's this big deal when you lose, especially as a girl, when you lose your virginity. And for them, it was not a big deal that she was losing her virginity. She wanted to get pregnant.
Yep, that's it. And they were there for her.
And that's it.
And he was, like I think I said, he was the livestock, you know?
He was like the sperm donor.
Yeah.
I mean, he was like the bull that's just brought in to have sex with the cows and then leave.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And I liked that. And I liked that it was a sex scene that was about her. Right? And what she needed. She needed those other women there to help her because it was painful. Right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And if you notice, you know, when she was in pain, she didn't reach towards him and, like, grab onto his back. She reached towards the other women, who are the only other people who would understand what it feels like. Mm-hmm. But I liked that she, you know, she reached out to them for help.
Yeah.
I liked that. And the suicide scene, I agree with what you say. I mean, I think that it was supposed to be kind of a maybe not even endorsing that this is what you should do, but here's a different way to look at it.
Right, exactly.
Right? And if you would choose to do something like that, then that's your right. And if not, that's okay too.
Yeah.
But the point is that you need to be respectful of other people's decisions in regards to their own body and their own life. Yeah. And obviously, back to what we were saying, the two Londoners were not respectful of their decisions.
Exactly.
The culture.
I'm thinking about this because I was talking about it in terms of end of life care and stuff like this. But when we get to the sacrifice scene at the end, there are younger people who volunteer. And I want to make it clear that I don't endorse that at all. Like, people taking their own lives who are, you know, not terminally ill or not old and just about ready to die, stuff like that.
Right.
I don't think that's healthy. I think you should get help.
Right.
So there were some things in there that I maybe wish they hadn't done that they did in favor of it still being a horror movie, because they really brought up so many good points. But then it was like, oh, this is still a horror movie, right? So
Right. And I thought it was interesting that they, you know, when those two guys were in there, they gave them the sap from the yew tree so they wouldn't feel any pain, and then it was horrifically painful.
You know, I was really interested in that because he said something like, take from the yew, feel no pain. And then he gives it to the other guy and he says, take from the yew, feel no fear. And I wonder if one person was supposed to not feel pain and the other was supposed to not feel fear, depending on whatever kind of ritual that was.
That's true. That's true.
And I couldn't remember if the guy, and I don't remember his name, if the guy on the right was not screaming, but the guy on the left, who was supposed to not feel fear, was screaming, but...
No. The one who he said feel no pain to is the one that was screaming.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. But I don't know. I thought that was interesting. That he chose to do that. To have them, do this ritual, and then it turns out that they're wrong and it does hurt. And I'm sure that they were afraid. The other guy was afraid, knowing that the fire was coming. Right?
I'm looking at, because this is something that I meant to look up, what the medicinal properties of yew tree, apparently it's good for a lot of stuff, practically, not in a fantasy world, but
right.
It says despite serious safety concerns, whatever that means, yew is used for treating diphtheria, tapeworms, swollen tonsils, seizures, muscle and joint pain, urinary tract conditions, and liver conditions. So,
well, what do you know?
It looks like it's kind of a double-edged sword there. It might be poisonous or something if there's safety concerns, like if it's given too much of or too often, or that's just a guess.
Interesting.
Tree of Death, so there's an article saying it's called Pacific Yew, Tree of Death or Tree of Life, or both. So
yeah, it just says yew trees are highly sacred and symbolic in some places, but have no actual remarkable medicinal properties and are in fact largely poisonous to consume.
Yeah, it says every part of the tree is poisonous, excluding the red arils, though these still contain a poisonous seed. Oh, it's because people have found their livestock dead because of it.
Yeah.
Once used for suicide during war times. Oh, God. There's another rabbit hole.
I kind of wonder what that was supposed to mean. Was it supposed to mean that some of their rituals are bullshit?
That's a good question. There's a question I put on here that I think we should ask now. That ties into that extremely well. So this was a part of the conversation I was having with Paul's friend. Do you think Maya's charms against Christian actually worked? Or did he, quote unquote, mate with her totally of his own volition? So, are some of the rituals bullshit? And this is one of them that we need to discuss.
I think that most things like that are bullshit, but if you believe them, they're not bullshit.
So you think this applies to the film as well?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. I think that she believes in that ritual, obviously. And because Christian has seen the mural, he also believes in that ritual. And so, for both of them, yes, it is effective. Because they both believe in it. They both believe that the ritual works.
Well, there's obviously a huge psychological element to spell work. And again, not that I'm an expert at all on this, but it's a little bit... I don't want to reference The Secret because I think that book is bullshit. But...
yeah.
But, like, if you believe you're going to do well, you'll probably do better, Or if you believe, if you put your energy into doing something a certain way, it'll probably turn out that way. If you go in thinking it's all going to be terrible, it probably will be, because you've already decided it's going to be terrible. So, same with the love spells and the, like, I think he's going into this world where it's like, oh, and these red-headed fairy women cast spells on you.
Right.
And, like, whether or not the spell is actually legitimate, that has a psychological effect.
Right. No, I definitely agree. And I think that had he been able to explain himself to Danny, he may have tried to use the spell, the love spell that she casts, and then the rune, like the love rune that she puts under his bed. as an excuse, but he wanted to do it.
Oh, yeah, I know he did. I mean, he obviously has been looking at her and looking at the women in general, you know.
Well, and I felt like he was on the fence about wanting to actually have sex with her, like maybe look at her, like you said, and think about it, until Dani becomes May Queen and they put her up on that, like, table and they carry her. And the whole village is going with her, and she turns back, and Christian is just standing there alone.
Yes, and he doesn't have the power over her anymore. Like, he's not the leader. She has all the attention on her. She's the important person.
Exactly.
You know, his thesis means nothing right now.
Exactly.
You know?
He came there for his thesis, and she got all the attention.
Yeah.
And so I think that that's what really sealed the deal for him, is that he decided that, you know, fuck this.
You're right.
I'm gonna go have sex
I
with
forgot
that girl.
about that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I could feel it switch. I could feel him turn to like, I'm definitely doing this now.
Yeah, because even when they were trying to give him the drink, when he was watching the May Queen dance, he didn't want to drink it because he knew they were giving it to him to, you know, lower his inhibitions.
Yeah.
To go have sex with Maya.
Yeah. So we still, I don't know if we're ever going to reach an answer on, like, are some of the rituals not legitimate? I think that's supposed to be super open-ended. I think so too. I think we're supposed to be sitting on the fence about that, you know.
I think so too.
And I do like the way that it didn't ever go over all the way into the supernatural, you know, into the
right.
It kept a very concrete reality the whole time, and the drug trips weren't done like in a super overt way. They weren't done in a like really over the top. They were done just well enough to make the world around you seem disconcerting.
Right. And I loved that everything throughout the rest of the movie after the May Queen dance continued to move.
Yes.
And pulse.
Yeah, so her
like the flowers on her crown opening
that.
And closing. And even the background, like the hills going up and down.
Yes.
I mean, everything continued to move and pulse throughout the whole movie, and I liked that. Almost like the whole environment around her now that she had been crowned the May Queen, was alive.
Yes. And the tree, like, I think they panned up into the tree branches, and the tree limb that is straight just kind of bent in a, like...
Yes.
Weird...
Yes.
I
liked that a lot. Ugh. There's so much in this movie, and there's so much we're not even going to get to talk about.
Oh, no.
So what scene will stick with you the most?
I've been thinking about this, and I can't really pick. I mean, I might be recalling the May Queen sequence because it was the last part of the movie and the most dramatic part of the movie, but I think the movie works as this whole picture. It's just a whole entity to me. If I had to pick one, it's the maypole scene. It was just so freeing, I guess, to watch.
Yeah, and I agree. One thing I noticed in the maypole scene was that's the first time that you ever see Dani, like, really smile.
Yeah.
Not like a forced, everything's fine, I'm having a great time, smile. Like, she's actually legitimately smiling and laughing. You know? Yeah. I mean, for me, the one scene that will stick with me is the end of the movie, when she is walking in that beautiful flower dress that I absolutely would love to have and just, like, wear around my house. And she's screaming because, you know, she's kind of taking in what she's done, right? That Christian has been burned alive. Yeah. And then she realizes everyone behind her is screaming and finally feeling her pain. And she smiles.
Yeah.
Because she's finally among people who really understand her. And you know, she was the only one in that friend group who had ever been through something like that.
Yeah.
And they didn't know how to relate to her. You know, they didn't know what to say. They didn't know what to do. They didn't know how to act. Right?
Yeah.
And she's finally surrounded by people who understand. And I just loved it. I just thought that was the perfect ending to the movie.
I thought that's interesting how you interpreted her smile. I agree with that, but I took it more even as a, like, oh my god, I'm free kind of thing. Like, there's this whole thing. I agree that too. There's this whole thing where she would, if you notice, especially during the maypole scene, that's a big one, where she goes back and forth between having a great time and being extremely scared. And she'll go back and forth between that forever.
Right.
But this is when she finally settles on she's free.
Exactly. She can finally be her true self and express her true feelings. I mean, she spent the whole, however long it's been since her family died, because I can't remember how long it's been, like 6 months maybe, because it seemed to be winter when they died, and then they go in June.
About 6 months.
So like 6 months. Tampering down her feelings of grief, right? Because she doesn't want to make everyone around her uncomfortable.
Or not even just grief, but like her saying it's okay.
Her feelings in general.
Yeah, her going, oh, I'm so glad you're going to Sweden without me, and just let me know now, like, and you're leaving in 2 weeks. I'm so glad. Let's talk about it. And, stuff like, oh, and no, then she ends
up apologizing to him.
Yes.
That scene pissed me off.
Yes.
So fucking bad. When she was like, no, you know what? I'm the one that should be sorry. I wanted to, jump through the screen and be like, no, he's gaslighting you.
Well, and you get the sense that, of course, she's really convinced that she is the one who should be sorry. And so that's why she's going back and forth between this, I'm terrified and I'm having a terrible time, to, I am free at last,
Right. Because she's really clinging, I mean, especially in that scene, and then throughout, the beginnings of when they're in the commune, she's really clinging to Christian because he's about all she has left.
Mm-hmm. And they do things as a unit. Is gone. And then, oh my gosh! And then when they finally split up, she says, "Can Christian ride with me?" After she's been crowned, and they say, "No, the May Queen rides alone." And I was just like, chills.
Finally,
yes.
Finally. Yeah, it's, this movie. Oh god, I just loved it so much.
It's the best one I've seen in a really long time.
Me too.
For me, probably since Hereditary, to be honest.
Yeah, I mean, same. I mean, I, immediately wanted to turn around and be like, when's the 10 o'clock showing?
Yep, exactly.
I want to see it.
What do you think about the originality of this movie? Do you feel like it referenced anything you've seen before?
So I do. I think that he was clearly inspired by... Now, I'm talking about the original here, not the one with Nicolas Cage. I'm sorry, Miranda. I know you love it, but it's shitty. But The Wicker Man, right? I mean, he's clearly being referenced, or he's clearly been inspired by The Wicker Man, and kind of this outsider coming to this community, and there's this festival, and he thinks he knows what's going on, but actually he doesn't know what's going on at all, right?
Yeah.
And I don't want to spoil The Wicker Man because I don't know if you've seen it, and it has a really good ending and a really good twist ending.
I have not.
Okay, so I won't spoil it, but anyway, it does have a really good and kind of almost a similar feeling ending, I guess, to this movie. So yeah, I mean, that's immediately when I saw the previews, I was like, this is like The Wicker Man. Yeah. But still amazing. I don't feel like it was like a ripoff of The Wicker Man. It was very different from it, but clearly inspired by it.
Right. It was like in MasterChef when they say you have to elevate normal food. Right. They give you the canned salmon and you have to elevate it. Wicker
exactly.
Man, Midsommer.
To me that was the most clear reference.
For me, it was Midsummer Night's Dream. I mean,
I could see that too, yeah.
Especially with the drug trips. Shakespeare is a little more subtle about it, but just the whole this thing can influence you and make you do things that you wouldn't normally do or you would want to do. Just the whole ethereal, and especially the fact that they brought relationships, messy relationships into it. Infatuation and repulsion and all that stuff. Loved that. I'm extremely, I think that he's seen the play or read the play or had some encounter with it.
I'm sure
definitely
he has,
was considering it while he was making this film, and I thought it was a really nice nod to something that I love dearly. So yes.
No, I can definitely see that. I definitely agree that Midsummer Night's Dream was an influence in this.
I thought Maya was basically Helena. Like, she wanted this guy, she wanted him so bad, but then you find out she only wants him to mate with him, and she's just kind of using him, and it turns the whole thing on its head. Like, I thought that was so funny. Agree. So funny.
Yeah.
And there's the whole weird obsession thing where, like, she starts, putting spells on him and using, like, her bodily fluids and stuff, and it's just,
I know.
It's like a very, wow, this girl needs to back off, but at the same time, there's a good joke in there, and it's extremely empowering.
Right. It is. Yep. I agree with you. I think that was definitely an influence in it. And I was trying to think of any other, like, folk horror movies, and I can't really think of any.
I don't know that I have seen that many folk horror films, but
yeah,
I know specifically that he did a lot of research on those rituals, like the salt herring. That's he basically did the rituals. Some of them are textbook straightforward, and some of them are exaggerated, and some of them are just actually, you know what? The bludgeoning was not.
Right. Yes, I did know that was legit, and I knew that the scene where the guy, the naked man, shows up wearing Mark's face.
Yes. So Skin the Fool, right? Yeah.
Yes. It was Skin the Fool, and then he said that, and I guess obviously I didn't notice it when we were initially watching the movie. I'll have to see it on a rewatch. But I guess he was also wearing the skin of Mark's legs, and that's why he was naked.
Yes.
And that's actually an ancient Viking ritual.
Yeah, I know the bludgeoning is a legend. I don't know that there's any like documented cases of it, but that's from me reading like 2 or 3 articles on Swedish Midsummer traditions.
Right.
So, but that's interesting that it was not something that he quote unquote made up. It's part of the mythology. Right. I'd be really interested.
Which just goes to show how much research he did into this movie.
Yeah, I'd be really interested. I know someone who is from Sweden. I don't know if she listens to this podcast, but I'd be really interested to talk to her about like how this matches up, or like what, even without having seen the film, is Midsummer like there, because it's not just like a niche thing. Everybody loves Midsummer. Right. It's like a big holiday there.
Right.
So I wish that I had been prepared enough to like ask her before I did this, but you guys know by now not to expect that from me. So
yep, nope, we're
or
never
Rachel
prepared.
Or Miranda. I mean,
nope, we're never prepared.
No.
Oh well, we try. We try our best. Okay, last question. I'll read it.
Yes.
Okay. Aster is part of a new group of up-and-coming horror writers/directors like Jordan Peele and Robert Eggers. And I put in parentheses there, The Witch, for people who didn't realize that he did The Witch. How do you think they're influencing this generation of horror films?
I have thought about this question, and I can't answer it. It's kind of like asking what's the difference between humans and animals. So, like, you try, and you think you have a clear answer, and then the lines start blurring. You know, like, I could say it's horror that means something, but that would mean that other horror doesn't mean something.
Never meant anything.
So that's off the list. Art house horror? Well, I mean, we've had that before, so check. Like, I could come up with a million things that are just...
Right.
I don't know. Right. I'm going to say it has the X factor.
Yes.
And it might... be the same in a way that other horror had that X factor in the time it was released because it was hitting people so hard. The issues that were being addressed were hitting people. I don't know because I wasn't, unfortunately, around for that. I don't know. Whatever it is they're doing, I love it. Do you have an answer?
Yeah, me too. I mean, I guess my first thought was, you know, that it's really, okay, because obviously there have been horror movies in the past that have hit on, you know, things that were going on in the culture at that time, right? But I really feel like these movies with these directors have made that kind of thing more mainstream, right? It's almost like in vogue now to do a horror movie with a deeper message.
That's a good point.
Especially after Get Out. I mean, Get Out was kind of the one that broke the barrier, I guess, to really bring it into, like, not just people who watch horror movies. Like, I know a lot of people who saw Get Out that don't usually watch horror movies, right? And, so I really felt like, you know, they're sort of bringing it to the public consciousness in a way that maybe it wasn't before.
Yeah.
And they're, you know, I love that, you know, because the big, you know, you don't need a big studio now. Like, you don't need Warner Brothers to make your movie and make it successful. So I like that we have these smaller studios like A24 and Blumhouse that are financing kind of these quote unquote weird horror movies that a lot of traditional studios would not finance. I mean, I cannot imagine a giant studio financing The Witch.
No way. But also at the same time, these are all A24 films, right? Besides Get Out that we're talking about.
Get Out and Us were both Blumhouse.
Yeah, those were not A24. But
yeah.
Is A24 a small studio anymore? Like, if I can go see their
They're
film
still considered an independent studio. Yes.
But they're largely influential, so that's awesome. That, like, they're not just a small studio anymore. They obviously have the money to finance these crazy over the top.
Right.
Yeah. So.
And they've done, I mean, they did Moonlight, I think was A24 that won the Oscar a couple years ago. I think Call Me By Your Name was A24. So a bunch of, which is like one of my favorite movies of all time. So like a bunch of really great movies that have come out have been produced by them. And Blumhouse, which pretty much only does horror, has done a lot of great horror movies that have come out over the last few years. So, you know, I do like that they're being given a chance. You know, what I would like to see from these studios is these are all men. 2 out of the 3 are white. I would like to see some women. I would like to see some women of color being given the same chances that these men are being given.
Yes.
You know, we can't have Ava DuVernay being like the only representation we have, even though she's great. I love her.
Yeah.
But, you know, I would like to see, because I'm sure there are a ton of women writers and directors out there who have ideas for movies that are just as great as Midsommer. Oh, and I would like to see them being given the same opportunities.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, hopefully we'll get there. I don't know why we're not already there, but...
Because the world sucks.
We do have that preview for the A24 movie that we saw that I can't remember the title of right now, but it concerned a Chinese family and it dealt with grief.
Yes, The Farewell.
The Farewell. It looked amazing.
I think it was a huge hit at Sundance. I think it's supposed to be really good. That is definitely one that I will watch on Netflix because I know that I will sob. And I don't want to sob in public in the theater. So I will watch it on Netflix probably. But yeah, it did look amazing. And I love Awkwafina. So
and I don't know who directed it. I don't know if it was a woman. I don't know if it was a woman
of color.
It's a
woman. I think it's her first movie. I think she's Chinese.
Okay.
I believe it's her directorial debut. But see, that's another thing that I love. I love that these people with their directorial debuts are being given these chances. Yes. You know, so Hereditary was Ari Aster's directorial debut, and Get Out was Jordan Peele's. and the witch was Robert Eggers, and they were given these opportunities, even though it was their first movie, because they weren't working in the big studio system. They weren't having to like start with garbage direct to DVD movies and work their way up. They were just given a budget because their scripts and their ideas were so good.
Yes.
And so I like that. I like that people are trusting them and that audiences are flocking to see these movies.
Yeah. I mean, as much as I love some of the Marvel movies and stuff like that, I'm just so sick of everything being a sequel or an adaptation of something that already exists. You know, I want to see fresh faces, first of all. I don't want to see actors I've seen all the time. I don't care how much I love them. I don't always want to see their faces. It gets hard for me to lose myself in that world if I recognize Scarlett Johansson, for example, in everything I see. You know, I want to see something new. And that's why I don't go to the movies as much as I probably should, or, you know.
Yeah. Well, that and it's so damn expensive.
Well, that's
but, you know, one thing I did that we didn't really touch on, but Florence, I believe you pronounce it Florence Pugh, who plays the lead. I want to say this is maybe like her third or fourth movie.
I've probably never seen her before.
Ever done. Okay, she was in a movie. I'll see if it's streaming and send it to you on Facebook.
Okay.
But she was in a movie called Lady Macbeth a couple of years ago that was so good. And it was only her second movie, and she was so good in it. And you would love it.
And see, I've never heard
and Miranda would love it too. Oh my god, it was amazing. It used to be, I think, streaming on Netflix, and that's where I watched it, but I don't know if it's still there.
Okay.
But anyway, but I loved how, again, she was someone who most people had probably never seen before. I'd only seen her because I saw Lady Macbeth. But she, I mean, to me, gave, like, in Lady Macbeth, a star performance, and in this, a star performance. I mean, the way that she could register emotion across her face without looking overwrought. You know, even in the screaming scenes, it just felt so organic and natural. Yes. It was believable. I thought, you know, if I found out my family was dead, that's probably how I'd be screaming too. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I was wondering. I was like, what did she do to get to that place in her head? And more importantly, how did she come out of it? Like, I guess that's another unique thing that these directors are doing, is they're oftentimes putting people we've not seen before or very seldom seen in these extremely demanding roles, and they're all killing it.
They are. And I love that. I love how all of these directors, you know, their leads are, like you said, I mean, people that we don't see very often, or people who, you know, maybe wouldn't have been given this opportunity in another generation. I mean, certainly with something like Get Out or Us, they would never have been given, you know, that same opportunity. But yeah, I'm here for it. Release more movies. Robert Eggers has a new movie coming out soon. It's apparently shot entirely in black and white.
Really?
I just, like, I can't remember. Robert Pattinson's in it. It's another horror movie. I just, like, really want to see it. I just bring me all the movies.
Yes.
Bring me all the movies. I can't wait. I love movies. And I still maintain that Toni Collette was robbed of an Oscar for Hereditary. Thank you and good night.
Thank you so much for listening. Don't forget you can follow us on Twitter at QOTD Podcast, on Facebook at facebook.com/QOTD Podcast, Tumblr at queensofthedamnpodcast.tumblr.com, and YouTube at Queens of the Damn Podcast.
Don't forget to rate, review, and subscribe on iTunes, Podbean, Stitcher, YouTube, Google Play, and TuneIn Radio. You can also follow us on our blog, queensofthedamnpodcast.wordpress.com, to find bonus content and extra information on our episodes.
If you would like to donate to our show, you can find us at patreon.com/QOTD podcast, where you can receive special perks as a listener for becoming a monthly patron. If you would like to make a one-time donation, you can send it to QOTDpodcast@gmail.com on PayPal. We'll see you next week.
Thank you and good night. Good day, sir. Good day. All right, I'm stopping.
Okay, I want to stop.